It is my pleasure to introduce Joe George. I've known Joe George for several years. It's been so much fun watching him and learning from him. And he actually spent 16 years in Russia and in Israel in schools there as a school counselor. So he has such experience. But he's back in the USA, and so we're glad to welcome him back to the USA. He is now working as a school counselor in a high school, Marshall High School in Virginia.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going over solution-focused trauma support in schools. And as Linda said, my name is Joe George. I'm a certified solution-focused practitioner from both BRIEF and EASI. I'm also an LPC, school counselor, a trainer, husband, dad, traveler with masters in both counseling and curriculum. And I'm a big advocate for presentations covering why, what, and how, so you have major takeaways. If you want a little bit more depth in any of these topics, I'll give you resources to use at the end. But this is not on just trauma per se, or just solution-focused practice, or just how it's rolling it all together. So we need to start with the key part of an understanding what is trauma. Trauma, as you can read, it's not only about the event experienced. The key word in this whole definition is actually "and," because it is the event that has a long-lasting effect on the individual's functioning and mental health. And many of you are also ASCA members like I am. I'm an ISCA and an ASCA member because I spent years, as Linda said, in international schools. But this is from the ASCA position statement on trauma. And it basically says, hey, you're a school counselor. These are the steps we do. So what does this all mean? We're the first line of defense when bad stuff happens. That's trauma, that's ACEs, that's acute anxiety, and many, many other things. So what's this mean, though? What are ACEs? ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, and these were first delved into by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, back in the 90s. And a lot of people have done a lot of research over the past nearly 30 years since. But the two parts that stuck out from the original research for a lot of people were the first and third things on here. Okay? ACEs are common, really common. And also, some groups have are greater likelihood of experiencing ACEs. But ACEs are not trauma. Okay, we're going to watch this quick video, and this gives a little oversight into something I think it's really good to understand. We'll talk about it a little bit later.
So learning brain is this brain that's open to learning new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grays and vagueness, and it sees the big picture. It like pulls back and is on the balcony, can look over the forest and figure out what's going on. On an emotional level, people in learning brain feel calm, peaceful, maybe a little excited about what they're about to learn, maybe a little playful and having fun too, and definitely curious. And they're not afraid of making mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. And so they're not really thinking about themselves. And they actually feel a little bit of confidence that if they just apply themselves, they might pick up what they're trying to learn. Now, survival brain, on the other hand, is completely different. It's hyper-focused on threat. It doesn't like ambiguity. It wants clear, hard facts. It thinks in black and white terms. It doesn't want anything to be gray at all. And then emotionally, you can imagine that survival brain makes people feel panicky, feel like a little obsessive and afraid of getting things wrong. And they don't feel calm and open to learning new things. They just want to get things over with. And people in survival brain also really don't like making mistakes, and they are afraid of looking stupid too. So students in survival brain don't want to be picked on. They don't want to raise their hand and ask questions and look stupid. And so these people are also filled with doubt about their own ability to learn stuff, and they're afraid that other people can see how stupid they really are. Now, it's really important to understand how learning brain and survival brain interact, because survival brain always trumps learning brain. And it makes sense because survival brain is just trying to save your life. And so if it thinks that there's something dangerous happening, you better pay attention to it, right? But the tricky thing is that as survival brain stays on longer and longer, it's harder to get out of that. And it's harder to really go into learning brain. And the way I think about it is kind of like the myth of Sisyphus. You know, that guy who has to push a rock up a hill, and then every day it falls back down and he has to do it over and over again. Well, being in learning brain is like being up on the high parts of that mountain. You can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to slip back into survival brain again. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Now, the kicker is that for traumatized people, stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, any little stress makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma misperceive ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all the time. Now, the good news is that the more you control stress, well, the easier it is to be in learning brain, right? Because that rock is a lot smaller. And what I really want to highlight for teachers is that the best way to keep students in learning brain goes back to why I spent so much time talking about attachment. Students best learn when they feel like they're safe and supported by the adults around them. So it's kind of like a baby elephant. You know how like on those nature shows, the baby elephant is like playing with leaves or exploring a tree or something like that and having a lot of fun. And the only reason why they can do that is because there's a whole group of mama elephants around that baby protecting it and looking out for danger. So a kid with trauma or who's stuck in survival brain, it's kind of like that baby elephant who doesn't have protective adults around them. They can't play and learn because they're way too focused looking out for threat and danger. So this is why I really believe that the most important thing that schools need to focus on, way more important than any kind of techniques or curricula, is really whether or not they are creating that environment where students feel like they're surrounded by these big mama elephants who are going to protect them and watch out for them and make them safe. And when students have that, I bet you it unlocks their curiosity, their eagerness to learn and play.
So I really liked how Jacob Ham summarized really the Yerkes-Dodson law, which goes back to 1908. And a lot of us have seen this over the years, and it talks about optimal performance. And the trick is with trauma and students who are suffering acute anxiety, they live over on the right side of this. And we need to help them reconnect and feel safe, while we have to help everybody else challenge themselves a little bit more to get to the optimal area. But you have to remember that although bad stuff happens, not everyone who experiences bad stuff experiences trauma. Okay, and we can help everybody strengthen and protect their factors by preventing the overload to move forward. Now, for this is my own QR code. This isn't the one that Linda provided earlier. If you happen to have your phone handy and you want to go into this, at different points, there'll be 3 different points that we're going to be jumping into this. And we're not going to be able to spend as much time as I originally hoped on any of the 3. But if nothing else, even if you're not going to put it in right now, if you could just think about self-care. You can't take care of others until you take care of yourself. And this is true for both you and the staff, because the teachers are really the first line of defense, and we come in to support them and to take over when the big stuff really happens. And if you could throw in anything, what do you do for self-care? What do you do for staff care? Whatever you put in, though, if you could put a 1 or a 2 next to it. And you have to apologize. This QR code will only be active for this actual presentation. And if you're watching this on tape delay, well, all the resources and stuff will still be available at the end, but the QR won't be live. And we have people, let's see, breathing, get enough sleep, yoga, journaling, stay physically active. One person, eat well and take care of personal needs. And a lot of people are typing right now. Art and meditate. For staff, some people like myself, I'm starting a new school, and a couple people said that they're new. Group activities, shout outs for staff. Make sure they have accesses to the EAP and the IEP. So there's a whole bunch of good stuff coming in. Thank you for that. Some people are still typing. Please keep jotting down, and if anyone has anything that's a real epiphany or totally brand new or out of the box, in one of the later segments, I'm going to ask you to share your email if you want to ask questions that we might not have time for. Please continue typing until I change to the next poll, because if there are, I can also share these things that people suggest, just in case someone comes up with new things that you want to try yourself. Now, what does this all have to do with solution-focused practice, you ask? Okay, well, I love this quote. I believe of the dynamic duo, Steve DeShazer and Insoo Kim Berg, the co-founders of solution-focused brief therapy. Problem talk creates problems, solution talk creates solutions. I believe Steve said it, but I love the quote and I attribute to both of them. And if you go back to this ASCA position statement, the reason why I especially love it, being a solution-focused guy, is that I perhaps biasedly feel that 5 of these bullets better apply to solution-focused practice than any other. And that's because our whole premise is to build on the resilience and the strengths. And that is what helps avoid re-traumatizing, and it also helps the connection and the building of strengths to move forward. So what are the basic ideas of solution-focused counseling? Okay, I'm presuming that most of the people in this conference have already drunk the Kool-Aid, but here's my brief areas. Puts the students in the driver's seat, it validates the concerns but focuses on the desired outcome, and it focuses on what students want. Similarly, because of this, because you're not going about right or wrong, you're avoiding defensiveness and blame. Now, if you're actually practicing a different therapeutic approach, you're not wrong. It's just the one thing, because this is solution focused, and you're not, there is no inherent right or wrong. You're building on what they want, which is why it's culturally inclusive, because you're not determining it yourself. You're not giving them the homework. You're not giving the analysis. You're helping them by being curious bystanders. And therefore, it also battles trauma, because you're building on their strengths, their successes. Now, I was shocked when I originally learned there are a bunch of branches on the solution-focused family tree. And I have gotten certified in 2 of them, and I've extensively delved into another, and I've dabbled with 3 others. So, and one thing I can say is they all look at these basic tenets, that if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it works, do more of it. If it doesn't work, do something different. And what I did through my trainings is I took these things, and of all the different areas I studied, only one of them actually had a great overlap with schools, because we're not dealing with 45 to 60-minute sessions, we're dealing with 5 to 25. So I put it together in a program I call the Solution Focused Trifecta. And it starts with something that a lot of the other programs actually neglect somewhat. They take for granted that you already have the skills because you're a counselor. I look at it as, if you don't start with focusing on the skills to get the language, it becomes solution forced, not solution focused. And you have to start with putting on your halo. I'll explain that one in a minute. So then you can do solution focused looking, which is based on reframing, and solution focused listening, which is finding those strengths and skills. Now, halo, no, it's not bad. Okay, it's my little acronym to help me get out of my own way. And so it's how are you? And you're talking to yourself, you're not asking the client because you have to make sure you are ready to solution focused look and solution focused listen, or it's going to be a train wreck. And then you assess how are you? You do something about it. And if you need to breathe, breathe, do whatever you need to do. Ask yourself, are you ready to look and listen? Okay, proceed. And I literally do this before a student walks in or before I go into a meeting. It's actually very easy for me to personally do it in client sessions with parents, with staff, with whatever. But with staff meetings, especially when you're not leading it, sometimes daggers start coming, and if you don't put on your halo, if you're a fighter, you're going to throw them back. And it helps me get out of my own way. And then after that, I broke it into 3 segments. What's wanted, what works, and what's next. And the what's wanted is both the best hope and the preferred future. So what's wanted now and what's wanted later. And for the best hope, it really needs to make sure you're focusing on these 2 things. What they want, and it has to be both controllable and lead to a positive emotion for them. And then you use the miracle question or the tomorrow question to leapfrog over that problem completely and look at the preferred future for after they've already gotten what they wanted, when it's working, when it's at the end point. What works, where you delve into all the successes, strengths, instances, exceptions, etc. And you can do this with it. By the way, I'm motor flying through this right now. The solution focused trifecta, I do have a 6-module, about 10-hour training segment that I'll introduce to people later if you want to really delve into this a little bit more. And I'm covering it in like 3 slides. So I am sorry if this is fast and curious. And then what's next? And you can do all this through the scaling. You can just have them realize that 10 is the preferred future, then look at what's working. And this is what you really need to roll around in the most for most people. Just make sure that when you're rolling around in this, you are focusing on that all questions tie back to the best hope. And if you're a person who's segueing into solution-focused practice, you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is where you use what you know. But rather than actually teaching it to them in strategies, you use your own questions to help them find when it's working. So say, for example, I'm a big advocate of breathing. And for that, it helps me tone my motor, find my halo, and move forward. But rather than teaching them different breathing strategies, you can notice what they did and then ask them, oh, that was interesting. What did you just do? And then if you are a person who wants to get into the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and explain all that in the brain, you can, but you don't really need to, but you can. So basically use what you know, embed it to help them learn from themselves, to find the strengths in themselves when it's working in situations, and then build what's next. Now, for this, these are the different areas where I have had a lot of success using solution-focused practice. And I'm sure you have many others. So my question is, when do you use them? And do you have any questions? Because I'm flying. I'm going to slow down right now because I'm going to start looking at a little bit more of how you actually use all this to help kids who are suffering through trauma. And so if you could go back to that QR code, and I'm going to activate the next poll, which looks at where do you use solution-focused practice. And if you have any questions, you could also toss them in right now too. And I'm going to go back to that previous slide as you activate this. Someone's typing. And again, I would like to know if there's some place that you use it that I don't have listed here. Please share those type of places. And if you have any questions, toss them in right here. And even if I don't have time to address them right now, we'll take them and I'll email you directly. You could also put in your email right here if you have other questions that you want to kick around, then you want me to contact you. And I do have another place that you can ask questions, and I'll share that later. So some of the suggestions that people use: social skills group, excellent. And meetings with seniors. Meditation on the playground, interesting. With my family, when they're spiraling about something, I find this hardest to use with my family. It's hard to take the not knowing stance when you know. And but if you have the patience of a saint, and I can say this beautifully works with your family if you put on your halo. It's just harder to do it with the family generally because you're emotionally invested. Conversations with her own daughter. Conflict mediation. I find this especially helpful with mediations of all kinds. I've even done this with mediations between teachers on a team. But of course, individual, group counseling, etc. And as a parent of a teenager, yes. I have two kids, a tween and an elementary student. So 12 and 9, yes, use it regularly. Counselor referral form, yes, I'll give you an example later if you want to see one that you can demo and steal it, then use it for yourself. And conflict resolution, excellent. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go on to the next one. And we're going to look at how does all this apply a little bit more. Have some water, excuse me. And so, how can we meet the needs of those who have experienced trauma? Well, individually, we need to start with self-care, visibility, validation, and solution-focused support. Now, have no fear if you're not using solution-focused practice exclusively, because the first three are true for any approach. Any therapeutic approach is based, you have to go Rogerian. You have to take care of yourself, have yourself be seen so they know you. People don't want to talk to people they don't know. It doesn't matter if they know you're the you have the greatest amount of expertise in the whole building. They won't talk to you if they don't know you. So you have to help them get to know you. And then validation. Go back to the Rogerian approach. Then you're solution focused. Okay. Now, solution focus isn't about not validating. It's not about moving on as quickly as possible. You do have to validate, but you also have to help them stop the loop. And these are different ways you can do exactly that. So, ways that I recommend and I have examples from these, by the way, on my website on solutionfocusfuture.com. I have all of these. I'll share that with you later. And but let me see if I can actually open up this without still sharing. Okay. Okay. Well, on this, these are just templates, and I have this, I believe, so you can actually copy the whole site on the Google site and create your own, including the referral forms. Now, the beauty of this is that it gives you a template for the actual meetings. So if you go into the referral form, and again, you should be able to steal this one as well. You have them, you can actually download the whole grade level and plug in all of the names here and make it scroll. So then the teacher, when they're filling it out, they can just designate the specific kid. Teachers battled for this one when I originally made this. This is a template of what I used to use in my old school. They really wanted to designate the area of focus, but they wanted to talk about the problem. And the good thing about actually using a template is that, yes, they can designate the key area, but that's also a way of just helping them focus a little bit more, and then help them know help them guide to what is the best hope and the specific main thing. And I gave an example on the sheet. And then help them springboard into the preferred future. That after it's been overcome, what will be happening instead? So in the meeting itself, you would validate, say, yeah, that's tough. But the student success meeting can't all be about teacher validation. You have to actually talk about the student and talk about their strengths so you can figure out what to extrapolate to move forward. And then look at what is happening when things are a little bit better. So after you do that, then you can tell teachers just to look for things that are working and bring it to the meeting as well. Tell everyone who's going to be coming. And then during the meeting, you click this other one, and you again choose the designated student. But then you take the information from the other spreadsheet and you can paste it in here before they even come in. You can do this straight out of the spreadsheet if you wanted, but I prefer this because if teachers go off on tangents, you can say, well, we have to get through this. Can we come back and we can talk about that a little bit later? And but most of this, you're actually taking what's wanted both now and later from what was shared, and then adding on for more things that other people in the meeting have noticed that what they are hoping to see after it's working. Then I encounter the reason why I have what's next, which is somewhat of a diversion for a lot of solution focused practice, and they really focus a lot on the preferred future. I delve into the preferred future only when people have no vision of what it is. I'll do it really quickly just to say, okay, what does your 10 look like? But then for what's working and what's next, a lot of kids and parents and teachers, they know exactly what they want. They know exactly what it looks like. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to get there. So really, I spend a lot of time delving into the what's next. You look at what's working and figure out how you can build on those things and what are the first small signs, and then you use that. You can use the miracle question or the tomorrow question from brief to springboard into the what's next, or use the scaling to say on the scale, because you already identified probably the 3 or the 4 as they were just rolling around in, and say, tomorrow when you're one step higher, how do you know? What are the first small signs? And have them describe. And then you could even say, if they said a 4, say, so tomorrow, are you going to be at a 5 or higher? And then have them pick their number and start describing that. But for the teachers, when you're building this, have them talk about the short term, and then make sure when you're creating that plan with them that you ask them to who and how will the family be tied in? And because it is really critical, and a lot of teachers, for some reason, it doesn't occur to them. So we need to tie in the family and take a real team approach. Okay, and for the one-to-one meetings, this is how I explain it, how I introduce the ideas to students. If you don't have to meet with them, like if you're a high school counselor, you're going to be dealing there with their 4, 3, 2 year plan, whatever, and or their preparation for their applications. If you have the luxury of being able to meet with them before any of that, you can do, I have a template here that you can look at for just introducing some of the language and helping them think about a solution focused outlook. And then group activities. You can use you don't even need to do these. You can give them to teachers and just give a brief introduction. And this group activity template that's here, that's also in the free resources, actually is a 2-day activity. And if they're and it's a 3-page thing. If you're only doing it as a 1 day, you just do the first 2 pages, but it goes through what's wanted, what works, and what's next, and it helps another adult guide them through what you already know how to do. Okay, so after you're doing that, then what do you want to do to build a system so you can bring this to your staff? Okay, first you have to, if you do a lot with solution focused practice, you'll hear a lot about listen, select, build. Okay, that's what you're going to do for this systemic exploration. This is the listening part, but it's you listening, but also getting the staff. You might have to help yourself learn, but them learn as well. Because any of these things on the right hand side of the screen for helping staff understand, some schools let counselors actually do presentations on these. You might have to decide which one is the key area that you really need to bring to staff to help them understand, but they're all incredibly important. And hopefully you have time at the beginning of the year to do at least one of these, preferably two of these. And I like to tie a little bit about the brain to any of these, just because it helps people open up and understand and make connections. But the one right here that a lot of the counselors don't know a lot about, unless they have a teaching background, is the multi-tiered system of support, MTSS. Now, most of you look at this and say, oh, RTI. Yeah, they basically repackaged response to intervention. But if you want to do this for a trauma-informed, inclusive school, you need to help everybody realize that all students need to be exposed to this, not just the kids who are going through some issues. And it needs to be tied to the curriculum. However, counselors cannot be the sole carriers of this. And we're actually going to conclude looking at, in a couple minutes, looking at how is this done in your school, because hopefully you have some epiphanies and good things that happen. And so after you do that, you have to select. You can't be all things to all people, because there is content that has to be covered in classes. However, looking at like any one of these things on the left could be a building block that you tie into all classes. You can't tie them in you have to tie all of them in. Okay. But for a lot of people, like if social emotional learning and recognizing emotions is the thing that students seem to be lacking the most, make sure it's tied into the content in all classes in some way. And on that site template, I do have class suggestions on ways that can be done as well. And then you build. And you build, and you have to repeat. You have to come back to it. You have to keep listening, select, and building, because on the building, you have to set a timeline and measuring sticks. So you can backwards design it and look at how are you going to measure it to know it's working. Okay, so if you want to learn more, this website is what I was talking about. It has it's my program, but it also has a lot of free resources. It has free resources for everything that's been covered so far, plus more. And if you do decide to, and there's a free template, there's a free demo for the first session if you want to try it. If you decide that, hey, this is something I want to explore, because you're actually learning about it through Solution Focused School Conference, you'll get a 20% discount. And even if you don't want to, hey, check out the free demo. And if nothing else, it might help you have a laugh on thinking about how to use your Halo and use Solution Focused looking at Solution Focused listening. Plus, you'll get the free resources. I also have a bunch of videos that I've interviews that I've done with other people from the Solution Focused world, including Linda and Ben Furman, who are both presenting, and Emma Burns, who's presenting at this conference as well. So back to that MTSS. If you could go back to the QR code, and if you want to put questions in at this time, put questions. But if you do have questions, throw in your email as well. But I want to know, this is the time that we can hopefully learn from each other, these last 5 minutes, that we can look at what works. What does your school do to build and embed Tier 1 interventions for trauma support and everything else into the core curriculum? And what's the connection of the counselor? Because you cannot be all things to all people. You can't be the carrier of everything, because then you aren't going to have time to do any of the Tier 2 or Tier 3 things that directly tie to you. And like if you're doing all of your time, if your only time with kids is social emotional learning, and you're going in and doing second step lessons or whatever, how are you working with kids who actually need more than that? It can't solely be carried through the counselor. So if you could toss in ways that your school effectively ties in trauma or any other support into the classes, please share now. Community meetings with relationship building, excellent. Calming corners in all classrooms, nice. Community meetings, okay, calm corners again. Has anyone effectively seen those used in middle school or high school? I know they're actually quite common in elementary. Class meetings, soft starts. If you introduce scaling, by the way, it's a good way to start the class. Hey, where are we today and where are we going to be at the end? What will be the first small signs? Or if the class goes off on a great detour halfway through, you can say, whoa, where are we now? Okay, what's working? What do we need to do one step farther at the end of the class? And then at the end, you can do a reboot. Say, hey, where do we end up? Weekly community circles, mentoring. Each student has a staff mentor. Oh, that's excellent. Each class is a self-regulation center. Nice. Teachers implement both Move This World and Caring School Communities. RTI, classroom staff fills out a form for the student, and then we meet to come up with interventions, which could be very similar to the student success meetings that if you want an additional twist. SEL activities, great ideas, thank you so much. Weekly community circles. All teachers teach an SEL curriculum. Way of counsel, check-ins, check the temperature, mobile mindfulness carts, community circles, MTSS. Someone put in their email, I'll contact you. We have all support staff go to classes, introduce ourselves to students. Nice. Mindfulness built into the schedule. Wow, so some of you are at very check-in, check-out. Some of you are at very innovative, progressive schools. God bless you. Some of us are not, and we have to figure out things to bring. I'm going to I'll figure out how to embed and share. Only one person has tossed in an email. If you want this list, toss in your email and I'll send it to you. And by the way, before we do last minute wrap up, for the resources, a couple things I wanted to point out. If you do want to delve into trauma a little bit more, recognizing signs of trauma, the Edutopia, it was good to share with teachers. Jacob Ham's videos there. Solution Focused Futures there, but also the Virginia Department of Education. I'm segueing to, I lived in Michigan for most of my life before I moved overseas, and now we're in Virginia. And Virginia Department of Education has a whole bunch of free resources if you want to delve into trauma a little bit more, and I included all those right here. And they're free, no sign up needed. And those of you who are putting in the emails, excellent, I'll send you stuff. And that's all we have, ladies and gentlemen, and people of all genders. You are my heroes. Thank you for coming. And anything else, Linda?
I can't think of a thing, Joe. I mean, you've covered every single thing. And I know I just watching, listening to you and when you describe what people were saying and asking questions, obviously they're loving it because, again, it gives them a 1, 2, 3, 4 step by step. And I think that's what we all look for in schools because there's things are so hectic. It's good to have that go-to. And I know on your handout you've got a lot of this, right?
Yep.
Okay. Excellent.
And I also have a solution-focused cheat sheet in the free resources. And if you, the little note sheet that had the what's wanted, what works, and what's next, if you go into the free resource and you go to the second page, it actually has question prompts on the sides if you are not used to using solution-focused practice and you want a cheat sheet to help you start. You can just, and the good thing actually about taking notes during session, which I know is not done by a lot of lines of practice, and they have to spend all this time after school trying to do frantic notes. If you do notes during session, kids frequently don't realize you're even doing it. And I have an iPad that I regularly do it on, and I'm looking at them, jotting down, but the ones who do realize you're doing it, they find it relaxing because they don't have to look at you in the eyes the whole time, and then they can look at the board that you're writing if you have a little whiteboard or something, and you're jotting it down. And then you also have so not only do you have your notes right there afterward, you can also export that and say, hey, would you like a copy? And then you can send it directly to them.
Yeah, that's awesome too. I think I've mentioned in a few things that I've done, Joe. I totally agree with you that giving students copy of your notes, because these notes are going to be different. These notes are going to be about abilities and strengths and assets and preferred future and the things that they want to do. Why not give it to them and say to them, "These are your ideas." So it's a lovely, lovely gesture to give it to him. Thank you, Joe, so much for joining us. We're so glad you're back in the USA, and look forward to hearing more from you. Hopefully, people will be emailing you and asking questions, and you'll be able to start up some new friendships. So,
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Linda, especially.
Yeah.
Take care.
You're welcome.